special cast to all things local guides. Yeah!
Welcome, folks, to the Go Loco podcast YouTube channel. My name is Adrian. I am a level 8 local guide, and I'm your host for today's virtual meetup for fellow local guides. Today, I'm doing a hands-on workshop on how to use Snapseed, which is a photo editing software by Google. The goal is to improve your photos before you upload them to Google Maps because quality contributions are very important. We are only doing some minor edits because we want to make sure the photo is representative of the real world. So nothing stylish. Okay, so this workshop is pitched at a very basic level. Basically, someone who has never done much, if at all, photo edits or never used Snapseed before. So if you are a beginner, I hope that you will find this workshop useful. Before we go on, let me remind everyone here that this is a recorded session. And once the video is ready, I'll upload it to the Go Loco podcast YouTube channel for the public to access. You can obviously head there to rewatch this if you feel you have to. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and it will certainly make my day if you subscribe to the channel as well. Okay, and just before we start the presentation, let's do a quick round and get a brief intro from everyone. So if you could just give me your name, your local guide level, and where you are from, okay? So you can all unmute yourself right now, and anybody who wants to go first, just jump in there and introduce yourself. Don't go all rushing all at once.
Hi, I'm Peter. I'm Google Guide level 7, and I've just logged on now and the camera's working, and I'm from the northwest of the UK, northwest of England.
Cool, nice to have you here, Peter. Who else is going to go?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alpha. I'm from the Gambia, but I'm currently in Cyprus for studies. I'm a level 8. Good to be here.
Cool, thank you. Next.
Hello everyone, my name is Shriya. I'm local guide level 8 from Mumbai, India.
Hi all, this is Isha. I'm a level 8 local guide from London, UK. Very nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Rosie Kohli, level 7 local guide from Mumbai. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Kashif Nisidia from Karachi, Pakistan, level 10 local guide. Thank you.
Hi all, I'm a level 10 local guide. My name's Adam and I'm currently in Melbourne, Australia. Hello everybody.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. I think that's everybody that's in here. So I've got my screen sharing for the presentation, and I hope you're all ready for that. Okay, so today's workshop is obviously about Snapseed, and it's going to be a beginner session. It's going to be really simple, and I hope you find it actually useful because it might be too low level for you all, but who knows? We'll see what happens. Okay, so this is the agenda for today's workshop. Obviously, I'm doing an introduction for it, but I'm also going to do a quick overview of the Snapseed app. So I'm going to cover almost the whole bits of the app itself and what you can find in it. And then I'm going to spend some time on the basic tools, and then we'll do some practical examples. And then this last bit is the homework and Q&A. And yes, there is going to be some homework. It's entirely optional. So if you want to do it, that's great. If you don't feel you want to do it, that's also absolutely fine. But it'd be great if you do join in. Okay, so on to the Snapseed app. So if you've never used Snapseed before, when you first open up the app, this is what you see. So if you have it with you in your hand, like, here, you you open it up, this is the screen that you see. Okay, I know this is going to be really basic, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows what they're doing. Okay, and you will see the 2 different options here to open up an image and load it up. So it's really straightforward. Just tap on it and you load up an image. And then you also have 3 different buttons on the top right. And the first is the view edits. And this covers undo, redo, revert, view edits, and QR look. And we'll get into that in more depth later on. And the next button that you'll see is the image details. Again, I'll cover that in a later slide. And the last button that you see in the top right is the 3 dots. That's the overflow menu. And that's where you go to access the settings, tutorials, help, and feedback. Just by the way, I speak quite fast, especially when I'm stressed. So if I'm going too fast, just let me know and I'll try my best to slow down. Usually midway through the presentation, I tend to slow down once I calm down a little bit, but I do have quite a number of slides to go through, so I'm going to speed right through this. Okay, the next slide that you see, once you load up a picture, in this case, I've chosen cats plush toys, I guess. Once you've loaded up the picture, this is the default screen that you see. So you have 3 buttons at the bottom toolbar. Those are the looks, tools, and export. And it always defaults to looks first. Okay, so looks is basically presets for, oops, there's someone trying to get in. Sorry, I'm just going to let that person in. Okay, so hi, Mas. Sorry, but we were kind of started already. So I'll let you introduce yourself later on in the workshop, but I'm just going to go on with the presentation for this. Okay, so for looks, basically it's a preset and it's got pre-made setups in there to quickly apply to any specific style to a photo. So it's very similar to filters on Instagram and Twitter if you use those. And obviously there's a long list of different styles you can apply, portrait, smooth, pop, etc. And at the end of the list, there's actually ability to add your own custom look to it. So basically, if you do any edits and you kind of like the style, you can actually save it into a custom look and you can actually share it with friends. Okay, so that is the look tab that you see. The next tab, oh, sorry, yeah, I forgot about this slide. Basically, the way I approach this is that this workshop obviously is going to be focusing on editing photos before you upload them to Google Maps. So we want to aim for things that is very representative of the real world and you want to make minor edits to it. For me, looks is very heavily stylized. So there's a lot of edits and modifications to it. So I would actually recommend that you ignore using looks completely because it's not suitable for Google Maps. Okay, it is probably something you can play around with on your own for personal pleasure or for your own exhibition in gallery somewhere. But for Google Maps, it's not the right tool for it. So you can completely ignore everything that you have in looks. The next tab that I want to talk about is the tools. And in here is where you would get all the tools that you would use for in editing your photos. And there are actually 28 set of tools. Sorry, from my throat. 28 set of tools. And to make it easier for everybody to understand which tool to use, I've actually broken them down to 4 different categories. So you have basic, advanced, artistic, and creative. Okay, so 3 tools I would class as basic, which is rotate, crop, and tune image. And those 3 tools are the ones that we're going to cover today in today's workshop. And they're really, really simple, and it's the most basic thing that you can ever do to your photos to get them ready for Google Maps. There are some tools in the advanced category where it can come in handy, but even if you don't know how to use them, you can kind of skip them and it's still pretty good. Okay, so those tools is in the list in there. And then you got stuff that's artistic and creative. So creative, I kind of classify it as something like for power users who want to tweak every single element in their photo. So there's things in there like expand and selective and brush where you can really tweak to your heart's desire. Again, you don't have to go through that much hassle to get a photo ready for Google Maps. If you do have to do that much editing to your photo, chances are you're not taking it correctly. So it is always best to make sure that the photo that you take is good enough quality before you get to the stage when you make any edits to it. And the last one's artistic. It is very heavily stylized. So again, I completely avoid this. Things like vintage and grainy film, too much styling towards it, and it's not suitable for Google Maps at all. Okay, so all those things that I've crossed out is basically all the stuff that you do not need to edit your photos if you want to upload them to Google Maps. Is everything clear so far? I know I'm speaking like a bullet train at the moment. It's really quick. Hopefully everything is fine for everybody. And you can follow on real quick. Okay, thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, the next bit is the export tab. And this is the bit where I don't really use it very often because I tend to save the photo immediately rather than actually export it somewhere else. But here you have share, save, export, export as. Again, I'll go through them later on in the workshop. And the last bit is the settings. You can adjust your dark theme or light theme here. You can do your image sizing and format quality if you're doing any exports, which we don't really touch. But if you do, I would recommend you do not resize and you pick PNG as your format because that's the one that has the least amount of losses in it. Okay, and you also get to tutorials. So this bit is actually quite really useful because they've got some good text and video tutorials in there, and it's really handy. But at the same time, they don't cover stuff like basic tools. So it's quite unfortunate because they tend to focus more on the more advanced tools, which we don't really need to use for Google Maps uploads. But if you ever want to go into more greater in depth, you can cover the tutorials in this section here. And the next bit is, if I remember correctly, help and feedback. Okay, so this tab is actually this page is actually quite useful because if you ever come across any glitches in your app or any problems with it, you can hit on the feedback and actually give your let the developers know about the problems you're seeing. Or if you have any features that you think should be included in your app in the future release, you can also let the developers know about that. And also there's 3 different links in here that's really helpful: the Help Center, YouTube channel, and the Facebook page. Okay. Sorry if this is kind of boring at the moment. We'll get to the exciting bits when we get to the practical side. I just want to cover everything in here real quick. And then there's the image details. You have 4 different properties in here or information here that you can find from your image: the date and time, the file properties, the camera setup, and location. So everything that you've related to the photos, it is shown in here. I've made a little note in there about people who's conscious about privacy. Because there's location data attached to your photo, if you're sharing that photo out to friends, they will have access to that location data as well. So there's actually a function in Google Photos where you can disable and strip out the location data from your photo before you share them out. So if you ever think that you want to protect your location, like let's say you take photos in your house and you don't share them out, you can obviously look at this setting in Google Photos. There's a link in the slide, which I'll add into the recap post in case you want to access that and learn more about it. This bit here is view edits. So later on, again, we'll see this once we do the practical side of it. But basically, this is where you can go to undo, redo, revert, and look at the view edit stack. The view edit stack is actually quite interesting. It's a very powerful function of Snapseed. Snapseed is a non-destructive workflow. So what that means is that when you make edits to your photos, you can always go back to those edits and tweak them again. So you can keep going back and making changes to your photos without actually losing the changes. So the view edit stack is very, very useful, especially if you're an advanced user. You can go back in there and there's many things you can do with it. And this is basically the view edit stack look. So at the moment in this picture, in this example here, I've done 2 different edits. One is a tune image and one's crop at the bottom of the right screen there. So at the top right, there's an overflow menu there, and that's where you can actually do more stuff. Like you can copy the edits, you can replace them, and you can insert new ones. So you basically can reorder the edits that you've done to your photos. And if you click on, let's say, the crop button, you will see even more options there where you can discard the changes, you can apply a mask, or you can adjust parameters. All of this is really advanced stuff, and you don't need to know it, but it's really, really handy. I use them a lot when I do my editing on Snapseed. So maybe in the next future workshop sometime, somewhere, I don't know when, if I get a chance to do advanced stuff, I would love to get into this because it's really, really fun to get into this bit, especially the apply mask function. And this is the bit where I stopped talking for a while. This is the bit where I stopped talking for a while. Sorry. Okay, I'm just making sure. I think I'm on time. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about common photo problems. Okay, so I don't know whether you can unmute yourself, and I want you to tell me what common photo problems that you come across that we want to talk about and highlight in here, because those are the things that we want to edit out in a Snapseed practical workstation, practical section later on. So anybody have any suggestions of what common photo problems we get?
I usually get one problem: brightness.
Brightness, okay.
And the contrast. Like, they just ruin a good photo. If there's too much of brightness, it's bad. And if there's no brightness, then also it's bad. So that's one problem.
That's good. It's on my list. I'll show the list soon. What else is there?
The main, most of the time, see, when we go out, to places wherein if you have to take a picture of, say, building or something, to be uploaded on maps, it's a natural surrounding, right? So you cannot control the light. that's there available. And sometimes if you go to a restaurant, it's too dim, to take the photos, and then you have to, sort of put on somebody else's torch and focus on the light and then take pictures. So I just wanted to know if there is any way in Snapseed wherein we can take pictures from it and it gets auto adjusted or something. Is there if there is any feature? I mean, I would love to know.
There are some auto features in there that you can adjust it. Again, it depends on the original photo that you have. Obviously, the better the photo that you can take, the easier the edits can be. Because sometimes if it's so dark, there's not much you can do with it. There's HDR functionality in Snapseed that you can kind of balance the light across the whole photo. And we can come across, I'll talk a little bit more about HDR because it's actually a function in TuneImage that lets you adjust it slightly better there. But again, is that if you have really poor lighting, it's really, really difficult to do anything about it unless you're carrying a light source in your hand, like using I never use a flash on my camera on my mobile phone because it's just too harsh. But there's a trick where you can use a second, if you have somebody's phone, you can borrow the phone, turn on the flash so there's a constant light source, but then you put a napkin over it to try to diffuse the light as much as possible. You can use that way, but then I find it really embarrassing because you're attracting a lot of attention from the rest of the restaurant or the place that you're in. But you can do that. Yeah. What other problems that we get with photos?
When I do
You're
editing
muted,
of
Adam.
food product,
Sorry, Rosie?
when we are doing editing of food product, I click photos now. I get different shades. So I'm a bit confused. Should I put the original color or should I edit the contrast and color and put it? So that I get always confused because I don't have any knowledge about photography so much.
Are you taking the photos indoors by any chance?
Yeah. I keep on my table when I click or in my kitchen. So when I do editing, I go for editing, they show different shades. So I get confused whether I should put the original color only or I should do the brightness or darkness.
You should try to adjust it if you can to make sure that your food photo turns out properly. And sometimes you can get an issue with the white balance. So a white balance, I'll talk more about white balance later on. But basically, what it is that the white color is not coming up as white in your camera. It may come out as a slightly different tint, like whether it's a warmer color or a bluish color, and you kind of adjust that in Snapseed as well. And that happens a lot when you're doing indoor photography because you're using artificial light source like a fluorescent lamp or LED light source and stuff like that. If you're outdoors using sunlight, you shouldn't have that problem. And you obviously get a decent lighting when you're outdoors, unless it's a cloudy day. But even actually cloudy day can affect your white balance as well. But yes, so I'll talk a bit more about the lighting because that's also very critical when it comes to taking photos. Okay, so any more suggestions of what the common photo problems are, Alpha?
Night photography. I enjoy that quite a lot, but sometimes it gets challenging. So if there's anything I knew I can learn from you, that would be helpful. Thanks.
Night photography is really difficult again, especially if are you speaking from a mobile photography point of view or from an actual camera?
Photography.
Sorry, mobile. So for mobile, if you want to do night photography, you have to be very still. There is some functions in Google Camera that I'm not sure it is available for. If you have a Pixel phone, it's there where you can actually keep it really still and it takes a really good night shot. It's okay, but you have to be very still. So again, if you're doing night photography, a tripod really helps. Or there's methods to do it where if you're holding the phone, you could lean against the wall. I'm not holding my phone correctly. If you're holding the phone, you can lean against the wall to make sure your hand is as still as possible. I always try to lean against something still to make sure that I'm not moving for night photography. It's a hit and miss because the moment you start moving, you're going to get blurry shots. You can adjust it slightly in Snapseed, but it's not that powerful a tool that can fix it completely. Okay.
Adrian, can I just ask one question, if I may?
Yep.
With Snapseed, sorry, can you edit the photo properties? For example, add a description which will become the caption when uploaded.
Unfortunately, no. You can't access the metadata, so you can't get into that at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you enter captions?
You have to type them out later on on the keyboard.
Later on, okay.
Yeah.
That's a big problem I find, not only with Snapseed, but also with Google Photos, etc.
Yeah. And those, I wish I could, as you said, edit the description and attach it into the photo itself so that it moves with the photo no matter what platform or what software you use. But there's no functionality for that in Snapseed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Peter?
And I'd like to know more about the composition, how to sort of re-centralize photos so it's focusing on something else, or get rid of the sort of peripheral things, the rubbish around the edge of what I've been focusing on. So quite often take a broad shot, but really I'm only wanting to concentrate on one part of it.
Yeah. That's a good question. And guess what? I've got slides for them as well. I have lots of slides for them. So I'm going to just quickly go on to the next few slides, and I'll list down all the things that I could come and think about in terms of the common photo problems. And you mentioned a lot of them as well. So one of the things is crooked horizons. So it's basically your horizon is not straight, it is at a weird slant. You got poor composition, as Peter mentioned. So this could be a variety of things. You could be too close, you could be too far away. Your composition could be very boring. Or bland, or it could be imbalanced, where if you're trying to take a picture of a cat and your cat's this small and the rest of your picture is this big, you're focusing on the wrong thing. So you're not kind of composing your shots very well. And then we talked about too dark or too bright, poor lighting. You have the out of focus or motion blur, especially with night photography, and white balance if you're taking photos indoors. And the last bit is over editing. And these are the people who use photo editing software and they edit the photos before uploading to Google Maps. And what I tend to find is that they use the HDR function a little bit too much, and it becomes very unnatural looking. So in the examples, which hopefully I'll cover soon because we have 30 more minutes to do this. In the examples, hopefully you can see what I mean about trying to get a nice balance. So you're editing it, trying to draw out some of the details from the photos, but at the same time, not making it look too weird and fanciful, okay? In terms of photo composition, so these are kind of like my tips for taking good photos. So I've got a photo here of a cafe restaurant. I don't know what you call it. I call it a cafe. Well, the title on the signboard says cafe. It's a cafe, and it's a building, and the way I would normally compose a shot is I would leave a margin around the edges. And what I mean by that is that I would always have this, if you look at the orange box, I would always have an extra space around it. And the reason for that is that if you ever need to do any correction on the rotation, or if you need to recrop your image to recompose it, you actually have some space and margin to play with. So always give yourself some room to play with and give yourself some space. So leave a margin around the edges. You want to follow the rule of thirds whenever possible, okay? So this is another shot. It's a noodle dish. And sorry, this is still the margin thing. I was trying to explain, this is the building version, and this is the food version of it. Again, just give yourself some extra space around it. For the rule of thirds, if you do not know what it is, basically you take a photo and you divide it in thirds, horizontally and vertically, and you get this grid where you got 9 different spaces. And basically what it does is that you're trying to align your subject either along those lines or at the intersecting points. So if you look at this lady here and the people sat down, they are nicely lined up to the intersecting lines. Okay, so that's to me anyway. I took the shot, so I'm going to say it's a nice shot. So I'm going to brag a little bit here. But yeah, anyway, to me it's a nice shot. It's quite dynamic because you've got your perspective lines to it. And I think it's nicely composed. You may say there's a bit of ceiling to it, which we don't necessarily need to see, but it kind of works. Okay, and this is another shot where I've taken off an ice cream in a cafe. And the way I always like to take a food picture is that I always like to include the background of the cafe or the restaurant itself. So you get the elements of the vibe of the place, not just the food itself. So in this one, I held up the ice cream, and again, I lined it up to the rule of thirds, okay? You could put it in the center. This is not a critical thing, but sometimes it just makes it look a little bit nicer, okay? And there's also this thing called symmetry. If you see something that's symmetrical, follow it, because actually that's a really cool shot. So what I mean by symmetrical is one of this. So this is a city council building in Malaysia, in Kuching. And basically, oops, sorry, I got an entry here. Let me just go back to that. Hi, Shruti, sorry. I'll introduce you later, but I'm just going to continue on with the workshop. Okay, so in this shot here, again, the building is right in the center. I think it's pretty okay. And also, if you notice, the base of the building kind of lines up to the rule of thirds. So you're doing multiple rules here, the symmetry shot as well as the rule of thirds in here, okay? And this is another example where it's a food court area. And I could do actually this is also a rule of thirds as well as symmetry. I put the archway or the doorway right in the center. Okay, so it kind of lends itself to a nice shot that leads your eyes into the center. The other two tips I have in this slide is if you want to focus on a subject, just tap on it in your camera. So when you turn on your camera, I don't know whether this works. Yeah, can see it. Yeah, you can tap on the screen and it will focus on that particular spot itself. So that's a really good handy tool to use. It should work for most cameras. And you can tap to focus to make sure that your focus is correct. And the last bit is related to lighting. Basically, you want to avoid having shadows fall on your subject. So if the light is behind you, you don't want your shadow to be on your, let's say, your dish, because that's not helpful at all, and it just makes it dark. So just be careful of your lighting. You want to position yourself so that you can get light on your food, but your shadow is not on it as well. Okay. And finally, we're at this bit here. We're not at the end of the presentation, I'm sorry, but we're at this bit here where we're talking about tools. And I'm going to introduce the 3 tools that we're going to talk about in the workshop is tune image, crop, and rotate. I'm going to breeze through this real quick because I'm going to explain it better during the actual practical stuff. So that's for the screen. This is the rotate. And again, this is the crop. You got aspect ratios you can play with. I actually might put a link to this slide on the recap post so you can actually go through it. But a lot of these things I'll actually explain better during the practical part. So I'm going to skip through all this. Okay, so it's time to flex your fingers. Whew, made it. Made it. Glass of water, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to switch over and present a different screen. If I can just find out where this thing is. Okay. A window. Okay. And can you see this screen now? Oh, it should pop up soon. Okay. So I'm using BlueStacks, and BlueStacks is a software that you can install on your computer. And it basically emulates an Android operating system. So you can install apps into this environment and you can use it on your computer. So for instance, if you wanted to use Snapseed on your computer, for whatever reasons, you can install it on BlueStacks and run it. So this is kind of what I'm using to kind of demo how to use Snapseed, because trying to hold this in front of the camera is not going to be easy. And I can share it from this as well, but I rather use this thing. Okay, so I hope you've all downloaded the 6 images examples from the gallery. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go through, I don't think we have time to do all 6, so I'm going to do 3 of them. Okay, so what I've done here, I've got 2 images that's menu related. One is a monochrome menu and one is a colorful menu. I've got 2 images of buildings, one's external, one's internal. And I got 2 images of food, one's a side view and one's a top view. So we got different styles here, and hopefully it covers a lot of different situations that you might come across when you're taking photos. I'm going to start off with this one because the temple, it's not a temple, sorry, it's an archway. Sorry, I don't know why I call it a temple. It's an archway. It's called the Chinese Friendship Park, and it's not too far from where I am at the moment. My parents and I go here to do our morning exercises once in a while. It's quite a small park, so we don't come here very often, but there's this really beautiful archway. And I took a picture of it, and I'm going to show you how I would normally edit it. And hopefully you can see what I do in terms of using those 3 tools and pick up something from this whole experience, okay? So again, I'm not going to bother with looking at looks. I'm just going to go straight to tools. And what I normally do is that I always start from the macro view, as in like, what are the big changes I want to do to the photos before I do the smaller changes. Okay, so the big changes here, I normally try to correct any horizon incorrectness. Okay, so if your horizon is not straight, I always try to correct that first. And then I'll try to crop it to a composition that I like. And then only I tune the image with all the various parameters I can alter. Okay, so I'm gonna do the rotate first. So if you notice, this picture actually is, so Snapseed, sometimes Snapseed does this where it auto-adjusts it, but in this case, it's not adjusted it correctly. So you can still see that the archway is not quite right. So I'm gonna correct it. And basically what you need to do is, if you swipe left, you swipe right on your screen, you adjust the rotation on it, okay? So what I do is that if you look at this house building behind here, and there's a small line there, I'm trying to get that to be exactly vertical. So roughly there gives me a picture that I think is quite straight. So it's done a degree change of minus 0.87 degrees. So it's a very minor shift. Again, the biggest tip that I can give you is that if you can get your photo, the original photo, if you can take it correctly, you don't have to worry about all these edits, okay? But in case you do need to, this is how you do it. And once I'm happy with that, I'll just press the tick, and I apply that change to that. Okay, so it's as simple as that. The next thing that I want to do then is I want to crop it and to aspect ratio that I like. Normally I go for 16:9, which is the last one here. But if I go by 16:9, it's way too narrow. Okay, so it's going to crop either the bottom half or it's going to crop up the roof. So I'm not going to go for that. In this case, I'm going with the original because it actually covers the whole building. But okay, I'm going to be very anal here because I always analyze things way too much. But if you look at this building here, on the right-hand side, the distance between this tip here of the roof to the edge and that tip here on the left-hand side to the edge is different. And I always like to correct that so that I get my building in the center with the same margins on both sides. And to do that, I could either shift it down this way or I can shift it up this way, okay? So I go from the bottom side because if you do from the top side, what you notice is that it starts to crop the top of your roof, which you want to avoid. So I don't do it from the top side, I go from the bottom side. Because the bottom is not too critical, it doesn't have any great details in it that you want to keep. Okay, so once I got the same distance-ish, which is, I think, thereabouts, that distance there and that distance, I'm happy with that. I just press tick and apply those changes. So because I'm cropping it slightly, it makes the image bigger, and you get slightly more details of all the whatever's in the photo. And this is the bit where it's a little bit more exciting and there's a lot more to play with. We're going to tune image. Okay, I hope you can follow this. It's going to be quite quick. Obviously, with your phone, play around with your parameters in there and see what's available. So with tune image, you've got quite a lot of parameters here. You've got brightness, contrast, saturation, ambience, highlights, shadows, and warmth. I'm going to go through each and every one of them to show you what they do. Okay, so let's start off with the first one with brightness. If you go all the way to the right, you can see the difference it makes, right? It's way too bright or way too dark. And this is one quick way, if you're not sure what the feature does, you just go to the extremes to find out what it does, okay? So in this case, I want my brightness is, again, the photo's not too bad to begin with, so I don't actually have to adjust much. But I want the brightness to be slightly brighter, I think, a bit. And another tip here, if you're, especially if you're working on your mobile phone, and if you have your screen on your mobile phone quite dark, because it's in your settings in your phone, in your safe battery, when you're editing your photos, you are very tempted to increase the brightness, thinking that that's going to help it. But then when you see it on a computer, it is way too bright. So you have to be very careful that when you're editing on your mobile, make sure that the settings are correct, that the brightness of the screen is correct, so that you don't over-edit it in the wrong way, okay? For contrast, there's not much here that I want to do, but I'm actually going to drop the contrast down slightly. Again, it's like if you go to the extreme, it makes the picture quite flat. And if you go to the right-hand side, it makes really strong contrast, which we don't want to have. So I'm going to just make it slightly less here. And the reason for that is that because I'm going to play around with the highlights and the shadows later on, which is in this bit here. Highlights and shadows work very similarly to contrast in the sense that you're adjusting the brightness and the dark areas in your photos. I bring my contrast level down because I want to bring out some of the details in here. I know it's the opposite of what you normally do. It's just that I find that when you increase the contrast too much, the darks tend to overpower the details, and you can sometimes lose it. So I bring the contrast down, and then I adjust my highlights and shadows to bring those details back up again. Okay. Next bit is saturation. I think it's saturated enough. You don't need to make it any worse. But if you want to know the extremes again, this is the extreme saturated color version of it. And this is when it's completely no colors to it, okay? So I'm just going to keep it at 0. I'm happy with that. And then ambience. Now, ambience is a weird one. And I had to actually look up the help function in Snapseed to help me explain ambience because it's two slightly different functionality to it. If you swipe right, what it does is that it does something that's very similar to HDR, where it tries to balance the light in your photo. So any place is dark, it's going to brighten it up. Any place is too bright, it's going to darken it. Okay, so that overall your photo is quite balanced. So again, I'm going to do the extreme, and this is what happens when you go to 100% ambience. Okay, which is fine, but it can, for this photo, it looks fine. In a lot of other photos, I noticed that it can look a bit too fake. And also you'll notice that the saturated colors in here, the colors in here have gone much more saturated. So I don't normally push the ambience that high. And the other thing is that if you go on the opposite side, go to left, what it does is that the dark gets really dark and the bright gets really bright with a glow on it. So it makes it glow, and I don't like glow. I don't know why, but it's one of those weird things where it just really looks unnatural, and I avoid having glows at all. So with ambience, I tend to just put it slightly up to try to tease out, again, more details of it, because you can notice that the higher you go, the more details you can see in here. Okay, and another thing that you can do with Snapseed as well is you can pinch the zoom. So if I do that, you can go into there, okay? And also you start to notice this at the bottom left, this thing here, the blue box. You can move that blue box around just to move your zoom into different location, okay? So in here, look at the details of the roof. If I decrease the ambience, I lose the detail. If I increase it, I get more detail back. But I don't increase it too much. And you can double tap here to zoom back to original view. The next thing that I normally do, again, so I always go through every parameter from top to bottom. You can go in any, obviously, order that you want to, but that's how I do it. Highlights, again, it's like highlights talking about the light areas in your photo. So anything that's light, you can control it by making it even brighter, or you can dial it down a little bit. So if you have a shot that is too bright because you have a bright background, you use highlights to try to tone it down. Okay, so in this case, the original, if I go to 0 again, you notice that the sky is a little bit overblown, as in like it's too bright. So I can actually tone it down, and that means I can actually see more details in the clouds. So if you go all the way down, it makes it look very stormy, which is up to you whether you want to keep it that way. But I normally don't go to the extreme. Again, it's like you want to minimize the amount of edits that you do to your photos, so that it actually looks quite natural. So I'm going to bring it down slightly. And with shadows, it's just the opposite. You're focusing on the black areas or the dark areas, and you're making it darker or you're making it lighter. So in this case, the shadows are already quite dark enough, and I don't think I need to do much with it. I'm just going to have a look and see what it does. So yeah, this is way too dark, and this actually brings out more details by removing some of the dark areas. So actually, I'm going to bring it up slightly, because then it's not too dark. And I'm just going to zoom in slightly to see what it looks like. Yeah, so I can see a lot of details in the photos at the moment, and it's just pretty okay. And that's, oh, sorry, this is the warmth bit. So warmth basically changes the color temperature of your photo. You can go on the warm side, which is super warm and orangey, or you can go on the cold side, which is super blue. Okay, so obviously this is where if you have an issue with your color balance or your white balance, sorry, because you're taking your photos indoors and the camera just couldn't quite work it out properly and making your photo either too blue or too orangey, you can use warmth to adjust that. It's not the best tool. There's actually another tool called white balance that attacks that problem better, but this is a quick way to do it. In this case, I don't think this, oh, actually, there is slightly, it is quite warm. Because notice, the way I look at it is I always use a reference point. So there is a car here that's white in color. So I'm using that as my reference for what is a white color. So I'm adjusting the warmth to the point where that white looks white, okay? Which I think is somewhere here. Again, it's very subjective. I think it's somewhere thereabouts. That's quite the natural white. And that's kind of what I do with Snapseed to edit my photos. It's a lot of work to do it, but I think once you get the hang of it, it's really easy to just go through the motion and edit it. Again, it's like if you can take a good photo from the beginning, you don't actually have to do all these things. It's just that when you get a really bad photo, that's when the edits help to restore some of the original look to it. Okay, and I'll just press tick. And then you can press save or export in this case to save it. I'm not going to save this photo because I'm on some emulating thing, so I'm not sure how it's going to save it. But I'm going to move on to another example. Yeah. Okay, we don't actually have a lot of time, so I want to know if you got any specific examples that you want me to cover. The food or indoors or the menu.
I need to learn about menu.
Menu, okay, good choice. Because actually the food and the rest, you probably know what you're doing there. The reason why I put menu here is, this is my personal take on it. People have different ways to do it, but I'll do this menu here. Okay, and this is one where, again, it's just my take on it again. So I'll do a real quick one, but again, I do the rotate to try to get the rotation right. So the auto adjust has done it for me, and I think the auto adjust is correct in the sense that it's now straight. So I'm just going to press tick, plain and simple, and I'm going to do a crop. In this case, I'm going to try to crop up my fingers there and the tables and whatnot. So I'm going to do a free crop, and basically I'm going to just drag that there and try to bring it down to where it's useful. Sorry, working with a mouse is really difficult sometimes. Okay, I think I got it more or less. This is the bit where I don't think a lot of people do. They just upload this image at this point onwards and say, okay, that's fine, done. But what I always like to do is that if you zoom in slightly here, okay, the zoom is making it look worse than it actually is. But some of the words are not very clear, and what I like to do is that I always try to strip out all the colors in my menu. Unless there's photos in there of the dishes, I would keep the colors in. But if it's just pure text, I would actually strip all the colors out, and then I would try to correct the contrast in it to try to bring the text out as much as possible. So I am going to just zoom back out again, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. So I didn't practice this, so I'm not sure whether I'm doing it correctly the first time, but we'll see how I get on with this. So the easiest one, first of all, is obviously strip out colors. So you go to saturation, and you just drag it all the way to the left, turn it black and white, and that's it, done. The next thing I want to do is I want to, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have pressed done there. I want to adjust the, I use ambience because maybe I should zoom in slightly. So I'm just going to tweak this so that you can actually see what's going on. By the way, this restaurant's really nice. It's a Thai restaurant. Sorry, my mouse. Okay, got it. It's a Thai restaurant. You can actually check out the menu here. It looks pretty cool. Makes me hungry again. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to use the ambience. And what I tend to do, I play around with it until I get to the point where I'm happy with it. So let me just see. I'm trying to get a balance where it's not too bad. So I get to this point, I increase it on the right-hand side, and then I'm going to adjust the highlights. And this is where I just bring the highlights real up high, because I want the paper to be white and the text to be black. And then the shadows, I can either bring it down or I can bring it up as well slightly. Depends on how you do it. But again, is you have to play around with it until you get to a certain style that you're achieving. Let me just trade this and also brightness. Okay. So the idea here is to make it really easy for someone to read it. And I'm just checking to make sure that everywhere is kind of okay. I actually want to see if I can make the paper whiter. Nope. Oh, I'm already at the maximum of my highlights. Contrast. Up to that point, I think. Okay. Yeah. So this is kind of, okay, you have to be very, very careful here because on the left-hand side, it's okay. On the right-hand side of the menu, it looks a bit overblown. So it's a little bit harder to see here. But you get the gist of it, of what I'm trying to do here. And basically, so I'm just trying to adjust the balance of the light and the dark areas to make sure that the text on your menu pops up and it makes it legible, easy to read for everybody that's looking at the menu. So this is kind of what I do with menus. I know a lot of people don't actually do this. I don't know whether it's the right way to do it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on editing the menu this way? Yes? No? You don't like it? It's a disservice to the graphic designer who designed the menu? I don't know. It's again, it's a personal preference. This is kind of how I approach menus because I do come across a lot of photos for menus and it's just so hard to see. And I always like to make sure that the text is legible. In this case, actually, what I could have done is taken a single shot of each page rather than trying to take one shot of both pages because it's too small. Oops. Yeah. So if I try the other menu and have a look at that. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to adjust the rotation on the crop. I just want to do see if I can bring out the text in this. Okay, the text here is actually clear enough, so you don't actually have to play around with it much. Yeah, the text in here is actually clear enough. But again, if you want that background to be whiter than white, you can always adjust it. I think it's this way. Just make it really, really easy to read it, which I think is kind of there, right? So that's kind of how I do a menu. Always make sure that you try to get the background as white as possible and the text as dark as possible and make it easy to read. And there's no fixed way to do it. You more or less have to go through all the parameters here and just tweak it to the point where you feel, okay, actually that works and that's easy to read. That's kind of how I approach menus. Oh, sorry, by the way, I'm not looking at the chat window, so if you got any questions, I've completely missed them all. Sorry. Let's have a quick look at the chat. Yeah, okay, I can see people saying that I haven't been answering questions. Oh, so if you have styles, I think basically, are you on an iOS phone by any chance, Adam?
Sorry, Adrian, no, that's Android.
You're on Android? Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting, unless it's the emulator that's doing it.
And I think Shreya had the same issue.
Yeah.
Yes, mine is also Android, but still it's styles.
Oh, weird. Mine is too. Mine's looks on my phone.
I wonder what version you have. Maybe we have a different version.
Okay, so to do your version, you can go to a help and feedback, and right at the bottom is your version there. Okay, so mine's 2.19. 219, yep. 219.1.
Yeah, same version number.
That's really fascinating.
Same.
Yeah.
What
I don't
about
know
the
why they have
other-
two different names for
Yeah.
Android operating system as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. I'll have a question if I can
Yep,
at
sure.
this point. I noticed, Adrian, you're working and editing in the emulator on desktop. Is this your normal mode of operation?
No, it's not. No, I'm only doing it this way just for this workshop. Just so that it's easy for me to share the screen to Google Meet. Yeah, I normally work on my phone until you told me a better way to do this.
No, that's
and I'm like, man, that is such a better way to do this. I'm like, all this while, but yeah.
That's okay. So you actually do all your editing that you've shown on the phone,
yes,
including your cropping, your rotation, etc.
Everything, yeah.
Wow.
I'm almost like 100% mobile photographer. The reason for that is because if I am, outside and waiting for someone, or have some free time, or if I'm in a toilet sitting down having a poo, and I got my phone out, yes, and I got my phone out, things like that. It's like that's why I always like to work on my phone, because I always have it with me, and I'm always have free time to do something on it. So I always do my edits on my phone in my free time. Whereas with a computer, I appreciate that it's easier and it's bigger screen and everything else. You got a keyboard, you can type everything out. But I don't know, I'm always distracted on a computer. There's too many things to play with. So, yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I'm just going through the list of questions in here. Wow, replace an image of a background, the background of an image. Import an object from another image. Yes, you can-ish. So in Snapseed, so this is a question by Maz. He's asking whether you can replace the background of an image or we can import objects into it. Replacing a background is, let me think, not quite possible. You can do overlapping dual exposure kind of thing. Sorry, Kashif, but your audio is quite fuzzy, and I couldn't quite hear you.
Sorry. I was asking that changing background is possible in Snapseed or on Photoshop.
To clean a background? So if you have very minor adjustments that you want to do, you can actually do it on Snapseed, yeah.
Hello?
We can hear you. Okay, so let me see if I can get an example to show you how to clean something out. Okay, maybe this one. Yes, this one would do. So let's say if you want to clean this lantern, you want to remove it completely. There's actually a tool called healing, I think. Yes, it's here. And basically, let me see if I can do this. If I just highlight the areas that I want to remove, it takes it off. Okay. It does do some weird distortion to things around it, so you have to be quite careful. You could actually use healing to hide people's faces. So for instance, if you imagine this lion statue here is a person and you want to blur the face, there's no blur tool in Snapseed or one that I'm familiar with. But you can just use the healing, just tap on it and voila, his face is gone. So if you ever need to do it, that's one way to do that. Obviously, it makes the picture look really weird. But yes, there is options in Snapseed to just take things out. Especially if you have a very, let's say if an aeroplane in the sky and you want to take that out for I don't know what reasons you want to do that. But like this corner here, if you want to take that out, you could just highlight that and it goes away. Okay. Change the background in Photoshop. No, that's too difficult to do on Snapseed. There is a double exposure, so you could do let me just see the double exposure down here. In other words, you take two photos and you overlap them. Okay, so if I open an image, and let's say I put this ice cream thing, and let's say I put it there-ish. Okay. Now this is the bit where you can adjust it. So if I go to my view edit stack, which is this button here, and I go to view edits, and my double exposure edits here, what I do is that I go to the brush. So in this case, before I do the brush, I want to adjust it again slightly. So the one thing I forgot to do is that I want to actually adjust the opacity. That's where it is. So I push it up to roughly, let's just push up to maximum. Okay, so what I want to do then is that I want to go to double exposure and use the brush. This is actually applying a mask. So what you can do is that I want to invert, sorry. So I want to, am I doing this right? No, I'm doing it the wrong way around. So you can brush things out. So if I just, this is going to be really slow because I'm doing it on the mouse, or maybe it's faster, I'm not sure. I'm going to show you a really quick way because obviously you need to zoom to try to adjust this properly. But you can kind of do weird and wonderful stuff with Snapseed using this way. Okay. So if I just kind of do that roughly. You guys are not doing the basic stuff. This is like advanced stuff. Dudes. Okay. Yeah, oops. And you can press OK. So if you do it correctly, like you zoom in and use a more smaller tool, you can kind of do stuff like that where you can put a coffee where a pillar used to be. Not coffee, actually, that's ice cream, sorry. Yeah. So you can kind of add objects to it. It's a lot more difficult, and I wouldn't actually recommend doing it because it's not quite the right tool for this. Snapseed is made for mobiles, so you're using your fingers a lot, so there's not a lot of accuracy in doing adjustment. If you're doing something as complicated as that, you definitely use a keyboard and mouse, and definitely use more sophisticated software. Okay. Any more questions? It's really weird to see the ice cream character. Yep.
Okay, so regarding the menu, I'm not someone that really likes to take an entire menu and add it up in restaurants. So I rather just pick the particular food and add the description, since it shows a tab from Google Maps. Would you recommend having a whole menu additional, or just focus on the single food or the different foods that you've had, and then you add it up on their menu and maps?
I do both. So I take pictures of the food as well as the menu. If you look on some, I'm not sure whether you've seen it before, but in some places on maps, when you look at the menu, there's actually a tab for menu. There's actually a tab that says menu. So it knows that other people have been uploading pictures of menus, and then it collects them all together and put them under the same tab. I don't think I can find an example here off chance, but yeah. But yes, I do take both. I actually find it quite useful to add the menu because sometimes I do look at it when I go to, let's say I'm checking out a new restaurant and I want to know what kind of food they have there. Yeah, so, okay. Yeah, I'll show it on the video. Probably not the best way to do it. It's too much glare, but there's actually a tab in there. You have to trust me on this. There's actually a tab in there that says menu. And then it shows all the different foods in there, but you also have a pictures for the actual menus itself. It depends. I use it because I find it useful. Plus, menus come with prices, and it's nice to know what you're getting into by checking out the menu ahead of time. But again, it's like I cannot stress how important it is to take a good photo to begin with.
So just one.
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. Just one more. I mean, for the menus here have now changed a lot. So you don't have the physical menu anymore since Corona started. So they've moved everything digital.
Right.
You have to scan and get the menu. So I'm just thinking, how would you now add that? Because if you add a link through your review or something, they would flag it out.
Yes, so I wouldn't add the menus in that case. If it's a digital copy now, which I understand what you mean now, yeah, I wouldn't be able to add the menus anymore. You could take a screenshot of the menu, or you could download the menu sometimes and then take screenshots of it on your phone, stuff like that. But again, that's way too much work. So yeah, sometimes you can't always do what you want to do. You kind of do what you can do. So if it's too much work, I wouldn't really recommend it. I think the way I look at it is like being active on Google Maps shouldn't take too much effort, because if you start spending way too much time on Google Maps, you can feel a bit run down. Like just to add it, just to add one place to Google Maps, you spend an hour on it because you're editing photos, you're editing videos, you're writing the reviews for it and stuff like that. It's just way too much effort for one place when you could be doing 20 places in that 1 hour time. And sometimes more is better than just one, because you don't necessarily have to achieve this amazing quality for Google Maps. I think if you achieve a good enough quality, that's what you should aim for. My personal take on it. So don't quote me on this, although it's on video and you can hear me saying it. So yeah, but again, this is my personal take on it because I spend way too much time writing a review. So I need to kind of take a step back and say like, no, I need to cut down what I write, because do people actually find it useful, or do I find it useful? So yeah. Hope that answers your question. Any more questions out there? I know, Rosie, you wanted to ask about food and making it brighter and stuff like that. I don't have a picture here that is very useful because they're all quite brightly lit. But yeah.
I had posted an album.
Yep.
You can do this.
Go ahead, sorry. Okay, I see you.
You said you didn't have photos. I had posted an album. The link you had given, in that I had posted photos. Food photos.
Yeah, it's just a little bit difficult for me to import it into here at the moment. Let's see. Okay, we kind of run over time, but if you don't mind staying a little bit longer, what I'll do is that I'll try to find. Let me see if I can do this. Sorry, you're gonna hear a lot of keyboard typing going on. I'm trying to find the album that you've added the photos to, and we can have a look at that photo and see what we can do to adjust it. So session 1, and I believe is, that one. Okay, I'll pick, do you want me to take your actual photo, Rosie, or do you want me to pick any food photo?
Any photo will do.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll pick yours so I don't feel too bad about, in case I talk negative about other people's photos, because I know you'll be fine with that. So let me just download this and see if I can quickly push it to my Snapseed. I don't know how to do this now again. Okay, I need to import it, I think. Yeah, Media Manager. Oh, imported files. Import from Windows, that's what it is. Sorry, there's way too many things going on my screen. It's downloads. Okay, there it is. Okay, that's backend, and where is it? Okay, there it is. So this is a picture taken by Rosie. It's in the group album. My first thought about this is that you don't need the extra details at the top and the bottom because it's just a blank area. So quickly, so the one thing that you could do is that either you take it a landscape and you angle your shot so that you can take more of the dish itself. So for instance, do I have a picture of it? No, sorry. I have it in my head, but I don't explain things out properly. But yeah, so in this case, I would actually kind of do just a free crop for now, or actually a square crop would do. So you want to focus on just the dish itself because you don't need to see the table mat below it. And immediately this makes the picture a bit more zoomed in and more focused on the food itself. Again, it's not a lot for me to... Actually, sorry, before I do that, I wonder if I could rotate. No, I can't rotate it. Sorry. I was going to try to rotate it because I can see the shadows and the lighting here is not where I would like it to be, but I'm very particular. In this case, your food is lit well. It's just the cropping and the composition of it. There are some food photos in the group album where it is quite dark in the background especially, so you have to be very careful when you do photos like that. It is very hard, I have to say, to adjust it in Snapseed because, again, it's like you have to work with what you have. In sense of like Snapseed can only do so much with the photos that you provide it with. If the photos itself is very poorly taken, then Snapseed can only do so much to make it better. So again, it's like the biggest tip I can give you is that always try to make sure you're taking your shot the best it can be at the original level. Okay, so in this case, I also noticed that some of you have very ultra wide camera views. And with those, you have to be very careful about how you... Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll share the photo album on this, and then we can talk it through. I hope you don't mind. Yep. Yes?
The one thing about the food photos, like sometimes it's not possible to take a top view photo, especially when there's too much of light. So how would you suggest of using the perspective tool on the Snapseed? Like that generally helps, but I'm still not good with that.
So if you're taking a photo of your food at an angle and you're trying to use perspective on Snapseed to make it flat, like a top view,
yes,
you can kind of do it, but then it doesn't look natural anymore. So I wouldn't actually recommend to do it at all. So I would say don't worry too much about trying to achieve a top view so much. So I can show you, I got an example here. I can actually show you about perspectives. Let me just see if I have it still in here. Okay, I do have it in there. So I'm just going to load it up on my BlueStack, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Oops. Sorry, this might take a little bit longer. That one, and where's my jelly shot? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to share that screen again. If I can figure out where I am. You should see my computer, I got way too many windows and my monitor is that big and I'm like, I can't find anything anymore. So it's crazy. Okay, so go back to Snapseed. Yep. So I think if I understood what you're saying, is that you taken a picture like this one at an angle and you're trying to correct it to make it look like it's from top view. And if I try to do that myself, I go to perspective here. It's really, really difficult. You can kind of do that to make it roundish. And then you can then go to, I think it's called scale, to try to elongate it to make it round again. But again, you see, it's like I've lost it at the bottom bit. You know, so you can kind of fake it, but I think you can tell that it's faked. You know, so
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, it generally looks that it's not correct, but
yeah, so that's why I wouldn't recommend it. With food photography, you don't necessarily need to take it from top view. I think an angle view is good enough. So like the original itself, like that, if you take it roughly around like a 45-degree, that's good enough. It doesn't have to be top view. I know you see a lot of magazines, you see a lot of food blogs, they do a top view and it looks amazing. And it does look amazing, I have no doubt about that. But again, it's one of those things that's really difficult to take unless you're standing on a chair, which, you know, do you really want to do that? So, I don't know. But yeah, I got another example here where for those who are interested in perspective, this is what I use perspective for. Okay, so I got a picture here of a jelly type dessert and it's shaped like fish. So what I'm going to do is that just give you an idea of the right orientation. First, I'm going to rotate this. Okay, so this is how it should look like. And this is how I use perspective on this, because what you notice is that the box is not quite square and you want to adjust it so that it looks really square and all that. So perspective, I think if you've used perspective before, this is just really easy. You can just tilt it to adjust it to make it square again. And that's that. Or if you wanted to, you can go to the free mode and you can just drag and pinch to where you think it should be. Again, there's a lot of lines, the grid lines in there that helps you to line things up properly. But you can do all that wonderful magic roughly like that, I think. And Snapseed does it for you. And then the other thing that you want to do is you want to recrop it. So things like this, where because it's a square box, I will just stick to a square crop and just kind of bring it down. If we can just figure out where it goes. Something like this, or if you want to actually bring it closer and avoid the edges of the box, you can do something like that, I think. I don't know whether that's better or you actually want to see the edges of the box, who knows. But you could do something like this, you know, and it immediately makes it look nicer-ish, okay? I think actually seeing the edges of the box is better than seeing that because, yeah, it just is weird this way. So you can again go to view edits, look at your crop, and you can then readjust it again. So I'm going to bring that back up to see the edges of the box. Roughly there, and then just say yes. Something like that. Yeah, it looks better this way rather than too close to crop. And then just go back, and that's kind of how. And I personally like to use vignette a lot. Not in a very heavy style, but I just like to add it just slightly. This is really weird. Did I press the right one? Sorry, it's not vintage. Oh, there it is. Yep. So I like to kind of bring it to somewhere about 25 on the darkness, and then on the outer brightness, and on inner brightness I bring it up to plus a little bit. So make the center a little bit brighter and make the outer edges slightly darker. And what that does is that it kind of focuses the eye slightly on your main subject here. Again, it's very subjective. You can tap the top corner here, this little semi-translucent button there, but it shows you the original, and then with the vignette applied. Okay, again, it's so subtle that you may not notice it, but I actually prefer it to add a little darker edges and a little bright center spot. Not a lot to make it look so fake, but just a little bit. Okay. Anything else that you guys want to ask me?
Adrian, if I may.
Yep.
Mostly of your food shots are obviously square, but in general, if we go back to the front store or front photo of that cafe,
yep.
Is there a preference, or do you have a preference for either portrait or landscape?
I generally prefer landscape. rather than portrait. I do not know why. I just have a preference for it. I think I feel like it's more cinematic when it's wide rather than a portrait. Portrait, obviously, if certain things, let's say you have a tall glass, then yeah, portrait obviously lends natural to it. But a lot of times I do try to go for a landscape itself. So let me just go and see what my photo album looks like, just to make sure that there's nothing weird in it. Sorry, because I took some photos recently of a. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so just ignore some of my childhood photos in here. I'm going to share this page. How do I? Sorry, I'm just going to figure out how do I do this. Okay, so this is my album, my Google Photos album, and it's showing you the kind of like the latest stuff in it. Can you guys see it yet? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I've taken some shots today. Again, so I tend to do this weird shot where I hold it up in my hand. That's out of focus. And this is when I actually tap on it to make sure that it's focused on the bottle itself. But again, it's like I like this kind of shot. It's very poorly composed, unfortunately. But I like this kind of shot because you see the drink itself, plus you actually see the shop itself behind it. So I kind of like this kind of style, which is why I always tend to go for landscape, even though it's a tall bottle and it would normally be a portrait shot. I just flip it and do a landscape and take the background with the cafe behind it. Okay, that's kind of my style, I guess. And there's another one in here where, in this case, I actually did a portrait shot. I think it's a portrait, yeah. Because I wanted to get the store name plus my drink, and it just makes sense to have it in a portrait. If I try to do landscape, then the drink itself will become too small, and it's within the photo itself. I didn't want to lose the focus on the drink. I wanted to make sure that it's there. Yeah, so
It makes sense.
yeah. Again, you can have it in the center. In this case, I kind of followed the rule of thirds and move it off to the edge a little bit. Plus, I could get this name in there, so that's kind of where I stuck with it. But yeah, if you notice all my food shots, they're mostly at 45-degree angle or thereabouts. This is almost like if you were sat there in front of the dish and you're looking at it and you take that photo, rather than you're trying to stand over the dish and take the photo. I mean, you could do that, but I kind of like this shot because it feels very natural. It's almost like what I see when I eat this dish is what I've taken a photo of. And then you can experience that dish with me as well. That's kind of how I see it anyway. Okay, this is a Sarawak laksa. I just had it this morning, which is why it's in my photo album. And that's a popiah at the back, so yeah. And yeah, you can see that I went for lunch with my parents to a Chinese restaurant, and I took lots of menus, and these are all the unedited stuff. So it's like when I talk about the shadows, you can see in here that you can actually see my shadow in here, which is not great. But I didn't want to, I was really lazy this one. I didn't want to move and get a better lighting. But I wanted to just kind of take a quick shot and just kind of get it in my camera. But yeah, I like to add menus because you can see the prices in there and it's ridiculously expensive for the seafood in here. But yeah, we didn't order any of that. Yep.
Sorry, Adrian. Can you with Snapseed then eliminate that shadow, or would that be too difficult?
You can kind of reduce it, but it is quite challenging. So let me see if I can do that in here. So if I download that, and then I import it into my BlueStack. Sorry, just give me a moment.
I think the other thing with menus, you have to be careful because they're often in that case, it looks like a plastic sleeve.
Yes, and then you get the glare from it all.
Glare, yeah.
Yeah, it's really challenging, and also trying to get it flat so that you don't have the distortion of the fold and all that stuff. It's really difficult. So I mean, if you have extra pair of hands, that's obviously really helpful. But if you have two, like most people have, sorry. Yeah, so, okay, let me just share my BlueStack again. Okay, window. Okay, there it is. And let's see whether we can actually fix the shadow in here. Okay, so again, I go to tools. I'm not going to worry about all the other rotation and cropping and all that stuff. I just want to do straight into the shadow. So let's just go saturation all the way to 0, just make it black and white, and just make it easier to see the shadow. So I think ambience here, we'll try to balance it out by making everything else dark, or that's not going to be helpful. No, that's the wrong way. Okay, so in this case, it's really difficult to do it. There is let me just accept this for now. There is also a selective tool. So if you go to selective, and basically what selective does is that rather than apply the changes throughout your photo, you're applying it to a smaller area. So I'm going to add a point, let's say there. I think it's adding, or maybe not. Oh, okay, now it's adding. And what I can do is I got structure, saturation, contrast, and brightness to play with. So not a lot of things I can play with. But what I can do is that I can make it brighter, try to minimize that dark spot there. And if you, I'm trying to figure out how to, oh, sorry, it's the hide button here. Not the hide button. Oops. There's a toggle in here that shows you the area that's being affected by it. I know how to do it on the mobile, but I can't work it out on the keyboard. It's interesting. Because you can actually see the area that's being affected by this tool. And I can't actually see it. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it. Oh, there it is. Sorry, it's a pinch. So if you pinch it, you can adjust the area that's being affected. So I'm not doing it quite right on my laptop here, but you can see that if I reduce the area, I can just specify just to that bit there, and I can adjust it. So there are kind of ways to try to minimize shadows. I can add another point there, and again, just do the same thing where I am just trying to brighten up that spot.
Perhaps this question is for an advanced workshop.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I mean, we are way over time. But I mean, that is pretty okay. You know, it's making the dark spot and kind of just brighten it up a little bit. And it's not perfect, but again, it's like, don't forget, you don't need to aim for perfection in this. It's very much just whatever you feel is suitable for it. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, sure, no props. Okay, so while I still have 6 of you in here, sorry, I just noticed that people were leaving because it's way past the allocated time. I'm not doing a good job at this at all, zilch. But I just want to talk through about the homework. So if I just go back to presenting my slides a little bit. Okay, so yeah, so the homework section here is really simple. What I would like you all to do is that if you go to the your group album, and basically you have all the photos being uploaded by all the various attendees in here. If you just pick one photo in there that is not yours, okay? Just pick any other photo that's not yours in there, and I want you to go away and edit it. And once you've edited it using Snapseed, obviously, and using those 3 basic tools, the rotate, crop, and tune image, and once you finish editing it, I want you to upload it back into the homework album. So there's a new album for you to upload it into. And I'm just curious to know and see how well you can make a regular shot taken by another local guide and make it better. And what would you be focusing on? Would you be focusing on the composition? Would you be focusing on making it brighter, darker, you know, and various different things you can do in it. So that's kind of like the homework that I would like you all to do. So if you keen to do it, that'll be great. If you're not, it's okay as well. What I want to do is that obviously I'll go through and see what the results you guys come up with, and I'll add it into my recap post.
Oh, we will do it. We will.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the awesome session.
Yeah, and I think
Please
that's all the
share
Q&A
your
stuff.
album link now for the photos screenshot where we can share it.
Yes, I'll send the links for this actually. So if I actually have it written down. Okay, so I'll put it in the chat. And there you go. Okay, so those are the links in the chat room, the chat window there. And I'll put it in a connect post as well. So the session 1 connect post that we've been chatting on there, I'll add the information there for those who want to access the homework album. But so just edit whatever photos, just one photo that's not yours, and edit it and then upload to the homework album. Okay. And sorry for going way over time. And thank you so much for staying with me. All 6 of you, 4 of you, 6. I don't know how many left. But yes.
Thank you, Adrian. It was good. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I was going to end this with actually some feedback from all of you. I'm not sure whether I enjoyed that workshop in terms of how I did it. I think it feels way too one-sided. I don't know.
No, this was very helpful workshop.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that. I wanted it to be more interactive. And, I was asking people to make sure you got your Snapseed app there so you can follow with the examples. But that didn't quite work out as well as I thought, because I don't think people felt the need to actually follow the workshop and do it on the app while it's happening. So I think that kind of fell flat a little bit.
Adrian, if I may say,
Yeah.
I think in the time you have, it's very difficult to make it interactive.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot to cover. You've covered quite a lot of area, which is good. And but I think to make it interactive with even half a dozen people would take a lot more time.
Yeah. I'm thinking that
we need two things.
Yeah.
See, I'm from mobile. I'm not using my laptop. So we need laptop and mobile. If we need to go with you and practice, we need two devices, laptop. So there the attention gets diverted.
Yes, same here. I also don't have a laptop and desktop. I only use my mobile, Redmi. So
that's fine.
That's why we can't do two things in one time.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to try to make it interactive was because I wanted you to actually use the app so that if you come across any problems, you can ask me straight away, like, hey, I'm struggling with this, I don't quite get it. And then I can come in and say, okay, you just need to do this. But obviously that's a little bit difficult to do if you don't have enough devices to work with. And also probably it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, and also if the menus are different, as in Shrek's case and my case.
I think what I'll do for tomorrow's session, actually, I'll cut back on the presentation side because that took up a lot of time, and I'm not sure whether was it very helpful to go through the whole Snapseed app in such detail.
I think that detail will be very useful in the recap.
Yes.
But in the presentation, I would skip a lot of it myself.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that for session 2. So sorry, guys, you're the guinea pigs. Testing it out on you. At least you'll be improved for tomorrow's session. But yeah, I think, I did a trial run of this, and I did find that it was much better when we were sitting down and just focusing on photos and the examples and just going through it and say, like, look, I'm trying to do this and I can't work out how to do it. And then I'll load up the photo and say, like, okay, this is how you can do it and stuff like that. But then that kind of goes beyond the basic tool set, you see. And I didn't really want to go too much the advanced stuff because I'm trying to keep it really simple and make it so that anybody can do minor edits to make sure that the photo quality that I upload to Google Maps is good enough.
Yeah.
So.
And sorry, I didn't comment on the chat because I
No.
get distracted now. So I don't want to miss single thing. So when I'm attending any session, I hardly use chat to comment.
Okay.
So we get distracted
No, it's
using
okay.
chats. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
at least I know what to expect for future workshops, and I think I need to scale it back a little bit, and
Yeah.
just focus on the areas where it works the best for everybody. So thank you so much, everyone, for helping me out in this one. And sorry for being the guinea pigs, but at least hopefully future ones will be better. So do join me in future workshops, and also let me know what you wanted to find out more. Like obviously this is very basic, and I think a lot of you actually know what you're doing. I would actually like to do photo composition, and I think Adam here can help me with that as well.
Absolutely.
How to compose your shot, because a lot of it is that if you can't take a good photo to begin with, you're making your life really difficult editing it in whatever software you use. So
Yeah.
composition is the number one thing that you should just get it straight correctly from beginning, so that you don't have to worry about edits.
Yes, it's
And
very
at
hard.
present, we can share only old photos because we are still in lockdown. It's 7 months. I've not gone down my building also. There is too much cases in our area. So
Yeah.
at home only, and from my windows and all, whatever picture I can capture it.
No, that's fine.
So
Yeah, I use a lot of my old
yeah,
photos as well, because again, it's like trying to minimize going out.
yeah. We don't want to take risk going out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Aidan, I
sure.
think you hit on a good point there. I think a workshop on how to take a good photo, because often it's very hard to edit a bad photo and make it
Yes.
a good photo. So we ought to start by helping each other to see what is it that you should do to take a good photo to start with.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't require too much editing.
No, I
Correct.
totally get the point. So one of the things that I wanted to try, if you don't mind me experimenting in this one, so let me just join this meetup from my phone.
And from mobile, you show from mobile because most of us now we take photos from mobile only. I don't use camera from mobile only. I
Yeah,
think
same here.
60-70% of LGs take from the mobile only. Only those who are specialized in photography, they take cameras and take photos. Otherwise, most of us are using high-tech mobiles only to take photos.
Most
Okay,
people
I have one
today.
question.
Yep.
If we posted connect recap or connect on post any post, so how can we good photo we post? Matlab, uh, we have to fit our cover photo on connect perfectly.
Sorry, repeat the question again. Sorry.
How to fit our cover photo on connect perfectly?
Perfectly in for this workshop.
No. She means when we are posting our photos on Connect now. So
Mhm.
how to fit? I think in Connect sometimes they have a size of the photo. How to fit it properly? That photos
Oh,
in
okay.
मतलब
Connect.
रोसी
हाँ
एक्चुअली क्या प्रॉब्लम है मालूम है जब भी हम लोग फोटो पोस्ट करते हैं ना और जब वो विंडो में दिखता है ना जब हम लोग ओपन करके देखते हैं अपना पोस्ट या अपना प्रोफाइल तो वो ना आधा ही फोटो दिखता है पूरा फोटो हम लोग ने जो पोस्ट किया है वो दिखता नहीं है अगर आज सामने वाले को प्रेजेंटेबल होगा वो फोटो तो वो सामने वाला जाके वो कनेक्ट पोस्ट पड़ेगा
Okay. She means we have photos now. I think it's proper. When I post it on my Connect post, sometimes that photo is not proper. It comes sometimes half cut and all. So, how to post a good photo on the Connect that can be
Oh,
appreciated by LGs? We need to see there are sizes and all.
yeah.
Posting photos na, and once TG sir had told there is a certain size, it takes very less time to download.
So are you
such
talking about the
techniques.
when you post a photo for your post, and that photo
Yeah,
is used as a cover photo?
yeah,
So the thumbnail that you see in Connect, it crops the
Yes,
text.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yep.
right.
yes,
So
yes,
Perfect.
yes.
that dimension that you should go for is the aspect ratio is a 4:3 aspect ratio.
Four,
Okay,
three. Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
if you're cropping let's say you're using Snapseed, you're cropping it, crop it to 4:3, and it would then show properly on the Connect post.
If
Yeah.
possible, can you take some section for this?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'll write a post about it. I'm not sure when. Probably after tomorrow. So probably after tomorrow,
No
but
problem,
I'll
no
write
problem.
about it and talk a little bit more
Yeah,
about it.
same way when we post on Instagram also sometimes photos, na, and
Yes.
the photo is there, but after posting we realize half thing is getting cut, so we have
Yep.
to delete the post and repost it. So about this also, na, you can teach us how to do it.
Yep. I can show you. It's quite straightforward. I think it's quite straightforward.
Yeah,
It's just that it's not an obvious one because I actually went and measured the thumbnail to understand what exactly the dimensions are because again there's no documentation for it. But that's
correct.
kind of so just kind of back to what Adam was talking talking about composition. Let me just get some water.
Yeah, she was talking about Connect cover photo. You said
Yeah.
now 4 by 3 should be the size.
Yeah, 4:3 should be the size that you should go for
Yeah,
the cover photo.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. About that, she's telling if you could teach us.
Yeah. I'll write a post about that. Don't worry.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay. Sure, no props. So I had this idea for this a composition workshop. And what I wanted to do was that because it's really, really difficult to try to do it live, especially when you've got a webcam and all that stuff. So the one method that I thought of was that I've got my laptop presenting and I got my second device here and I logged in as myself. And what I can do is that I share the screen on my phone. Again, hopefully there's nothing weird in here. Sorry.
yeah,
And then what I'll do is that I'll go to camera. Okay. So I'm sharing
yeah.
my Android screen, which is where you can see my camera app running. Okay. So one of the ways that I thought of doing this is that I am presenting correctly, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just see. This is not rotating properly. Okay. So okay, there it is. So one of the ideas I had was that if I'm doing a workshop on composition, I will actually do it this way where I can actually have my phone presenting the screen view of the camera app. And that way you can see, how I'm lining up the rule of third lines and what sort of things I would use on my camera settings and stuff like that, which actually I don't really use a lot. But yeah, so again, it's that the idea behind it was that I'll create a mock-up of fruits, whatever it is, and then I'll say this is how you take a picture of it, whether you go this way, go up, what sort of angle would you want to go for, where should you have the lighting, at the moment, the light is there, so it's very bright. So if I put it here, you can see the shadow. This bit here is not well done, whereas if I do it this way, you can see it's lit up better. So there's different ways to do it, but I'm not sure if it's going to be easy to do a workshop like that. There's a lot of technical hurdles, I guess, to make sure that it runs.
Yeah, and you're also restricted to internal shots too, Adrian.
Exactly, yeah. And I need to have multiple mock-ups of various things. There's only so much I can take pictures of. But at least you could talk about whether you keep it central, whether you want portrait. There's different things to talk about in that sense.
Yeah.
But again, it's a lot of thinking of like what actually will be useful. And actually, if you have a plate in front of me and then we talk about how to take a picture of it, that comes in a little bit handier. But that was the idea that I had.
Good. I think as an introduction, if nothing else, I think it would be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Yep, sure, no props.
Thank you very much, Adrian. It was very enlightening. I enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you for staying this long. It's amazing. I haven't bored you all to death yet. Thank you so much. I need to obviously message the rest to let them know what the homework's all about. But thank you, Mas, Rosie, Shruti, and Adam. And I hope you see you in a future workshop, whatever it may be. And yes, I'll write a post about the cover photo and make sure that it's clear what sort of dimensions you should be aiming for. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Bye.
sure. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, all.
Go loco with us. Go loco with adventure. Your unofficial cast to all things local.